Hey guys, the story I'm about to share is true. The moral of this video is you gotta be careful who you give your trust to and who you give your heart to, and not everything on the internet is always real. Back in November, friends of mine were really encouraging me to try online dating because I wasn't really much of going out and such, and so I decided to join a little site called Plenty of Fish. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this site. So I made a profile. I was as honest as I could be, put a couple of pictures up. Next thing you know, I was getting messages like crazy, emails blowing up. And I was discovering how many women like me, like girls that look like me, like straight looking girls that are gay, are like out here. And it was fun at first because, getting that attention and so. November 20th, I got a message from a beautiful blonde. Her pictures were dorky and cute. Her name was Briar. She messaged me, which I was shocked because I didn't think a girl like that would message me. We hit it off. We just had this instant connection, and it's really hard to explain, but it sounds silly through the internet, but there was just something there. So we were talking for the night on the computer, and easy enough. I was willing to give her my number, and we continued talking from there. That day forward, it was a non-stop conversation with this girl. I knew everything about her. I knew like her dog's name. I knew she was living in Toronto, 21, inherited a restaurant from her father, which was an actual restaurant called the Boiler House in Distillery District. Knew her family's name, family history, everything. We told each other everything. We became best friends. We were just so close. As stupid as it sounds, we ended up falling for each other, and we haven't even met yet. And this was over a week, to the point where we were actually planning vacations together. As ridiculous as it sounds, it was so fast but so real. Like, I've never felt for someone that quick. As time went on, we're becoming closer and closer, late night phone calls. I remember when she stayed up 5 hours with me because I had to do an all-nighter on the phone. We would talk until she would fall asleep or I would fall asleep. It was just, I couldn't even explain it to you. But we definitely were falling for each other. As I said, she was the owner of the restaurant at the age of 21, which was really impressive. She had to go on a trip to New York, and so she was gone for a week, so we knew we wouldn't be seeing each other anytime soon. This is pretty much the second week we've been talking to each other. As much as we were talking to each other, we were always constantly trying to find ways to see each other, but either my plans or her plans, her busy schedule or mine, wasn't allowing that. So it didn't bother me too much that I haven't met her yet, because I knew some of my plans were kind of just as much as hers. So from that, developing this relationship with someone that you haven't even seen, but just sending pictures and phone calls and messaging, you really get to know someone when you're constantly talking to them. So at this point, before she went on her trip, I could honestly say I fell in love with this girl. I fell in love with the voice and her personality. It just shows that how strong a personality could be. And she fell for me, and it was nice to wake up to messages, and it was nice having that, having someone, you know, actually care for you and have those emotions. Like, when you have that same emotion, it's rare to find, even though a lot of people are like, but you haven't even met the girl. It's like, it hasn't even come to that. Like, it didn't even matter at that point. So she went to New York and, you know, messaging me daily, what she was doing and things like that. She had to go for a business plan to meet up with this guy that was interested in buying her restaurant. So it was more of a business trip. During that trip, she was doing volunteer work and things like that. I was here in Toronto, school and things like that. You know, a few bumps in the road with her trip. She almost got mugged in the streets of New York. Worried the hell out of me because, you know, she's so far away and I felt so helpless. Towards the last night of her trip, she's telling me how uncomfortable she feels having dinner with this guy that wanted to have a thank you dinner. You know, he's coming on to her, and, you know, how could you blame him? You know, she was absolutely stunning. She was gorgeous beyond words. And so, you know, they ended up going out for drinks, and still we have this thing where we're always messaging each other, to the point where she messages me and says, you know, wow, this drink is really getting to me. And, you know, harmless as I thought it was, I was thinking, you know, you're such a lightweight, like, da-da-da-da-da. As she's telling me this, her messages become shorter and prolonged. And I asked her, I'm like, were you given the drink or did you see the drink being made? And she tells me the drink was given to her by the guy. Obviously, your first thought is the worst, but I try to remain calm and tell her, try not to take any more drinks, try to find a cab home. I didn't hear from her for 3 hours. That feeling of having someone you love in danger and not being able to do anything was excruciating. I bawled my eyes for those 3 hours. I had to call my friend to calm myself down because my first instinct is this guy could rape her, even kill her, and I can't do anything about it. 3 hours later, I get a message from her. After many phone calls and messages I tried, she messages me, hey. And I'm like, hey, how are you? No message. And I'm just like, are you okay? No. My heart drops. She ends up calling me. She's in the police station. He roofied her drink and ended up raping her and left her in the bathroom. To have someone you love go through that, I can't even explain to you. I stayed on the phone with her the entire night because she was so worried he was going to come back in her room. And thinking I could do something about it, I stayed on the phone awake, waiting to hear something so I could alert her, thinking I could do something, but I did. The next couple of days were rough. You know, she came home but was worried to see me. Was kind of ashamed because of what happened, to the point where she wanted to leave me because she didn't think I was ready for all this, because there was a possibility she could have been pregnant. I haven't met this girl, but I knew I loved her, and I told her that I would move in with her and help her raise the baby. As ridiculous as that sounds, when you love someone, you do anything for them. So it got to that point where we finally planned a date to spend together, and we're going to spend the whole day together. Now, mind you, she has mentioned that she's had a heart condition, but nothing serious. She never went into detail. The day we were supposed to spend our full day together, after 3 weeks of connecting and falling in love with each other, after all we've been through so far, I don't hear from her the next day. She tells me to wake her up early so she could calm down and pick me up, but I don't hear from her. 6 a.m. You know what? She's still sleeping. 9 a.m. I'll let her sleep longer. 11 a.m. I'm panicking again. I try to remain calm. It's so early. My sister tries to calm me down. I end up getting a message on my phone. Hey, is this Natasha? I'm like, hey, yeah, who is this? Oh, it's Wyatt, Briar's brother. I knew all about her brothers and everything, so I knew exactly who he was. And I'm like, oh, hey, how are you? And he's like, I'm good, I'm just at the hospital. My heart sinks into the pit of my stomach. I'm like, Wyatt, why are you at the hospital? There's something wrong with my sister's heart. I message him immediately. Where is this hospital? What location is it? He ends up telling me it's this hospital at Oakville. I live in Vaughan. I jumped onto my computer, looked up the address, ready to go, ready to jump in a cab, willing to pay anything, and I'm like, I need to go see this girl. He convinces me not to and to wait for him. He says he could possibly pick me up. Mind you, he's 17. I am talking to her father, and her father calms me down and says, Natasha, she's okay. She just had a seizure the night before. It's all the stress from what happened in New York. She'll be fine. Once they release her at 2, we'll come pick you up. So that kind of holds me down. My friends are all concerned. They're all worried about me because of just the way I've been acting. So I'm talking to Briar. She sounds sick. Apparently she has a hole in her heart, and it's getting worse. She didn't take her pills the entire trip to New York. 2 o'clock rolls around. I'm telling her that, her dad's going to pick me up, and we're going to spend the day together, and we're going to do all these things. Like, all we wanted to do was just have our kiss and just hold each other. Like, it didn't even need to be so sexual. Like, it's just something so little like that. That's all we wanted from each other. So, mind you, still haven't met this girl. 2 o'clock rolls around. I don't hear from her for an hour. Ends up she fell into another seizure. They have to keep her overnights for checks and things like that. At this point, she's pretty much telling me that, there's a good chance she won't even make it through the night. 21, and thinks she's gonna die. I obviously was in denial and tried to tell her, that's not the case. Her father ends up messaging me that night saying, there's a good chance she might not make it. And when it's coming from your girlfriend's father, that's absolutely devastating. So I'm a mess, and my sister looks at me and she's like, come in the car, we're going to this hospital. There's no way you could not see this girl. And we're driving to the hospital. I message her dad. I'm like, with all due respect, I need to see Briar. I haven't even met the girl, and there's no way that I'm going to let her die without even seeing her. He ends up going off at me saying, it's his last night with his daughter, like, da-da-da-da-da. I didn't want to be disrespectful. I ended up turning around and we went back. So that night, I was on the phone with Briar, and you could just tell in her voice she was just giving out. Trying to prepare me that whatever happens, that I'll still find love after her. Sorry. Even though this was months ago, wow. It's a lot of emotions. Pretty much telling me that, after her to continue to find love and things like that. So, it's obviously hard to hear someone you care about saying that, especially with our situation. So she tells me things like, Natasha, promise me that you'll look for me. Like, we're pretty much saying that we'll find each other. She's telling me she'll come back to me. things like that. She even asked me, she's like, Natasha, what if I come back not as pretty? What if I come back not as fit? And I told her, I'm like, Briar, I fell in love with you. Obviously, I fell in love with your personality. It really doesn't matter to me at this point. And when you're at that emotional state, you'll just agree to anything and say yes to anything because, you know, it's a lot of emotions going on. So again, we stayed on the phone until she fell asleep, but I knew it was more than just asleep. I cried myself to sleep that night. I did not want to hang up the phone, even though I knew. So I slept, woke up at 11, checked my phone. There was a message from her saying, everyone, we've lost someone dear last night. Briar passed in her sleep. I've never cried so hard in my life. To have someone you love gone from you is terrible. Like, there's one thing of breaking up with someone, but to have someone die, ugh. Like, I know what that pain's like. When I see people who are widowed and things like that, I know what that's like. So I get the message, and it was from her sister. I was such a wreck. My sister took off work and stayed with me. My parents had no idea. I wasn't out to my parents at this time. I just came out to my sister. It was a very emotional time in my life, and probably the hardest thing I've ever felt. So I was chatting with her sister throughout the day, trying to comfort each other. I'm sorry for being emotional right now. So we're trying to comfort each other, talking. All of a sudden, we were talking all day. All of a sudden, she tells me that a girl named Jordy Kelly wants to talk to me. I was like, I have no idea who this person is. I never met anyone in Briar's life and things like that. I've only seen pictures, like pictures of Amelia, which was her niece, pictures of like her family and things like that. Like, she showed me pictures, so I was quite familiar. So this Jordy Kelly was calling, asking for me. Her sister was kind of freaking out because she talked to Jordy and was saying how alike she sounds like Briar and things like that, and how she knew like her childhood nicknames and things. So I call this girl that's so eager to talk with me. As soon as this girl answers the phone, it sounds exactly like Briar. My heart just drops. And I'm pretty sure it's because I was reaching out, trying to find someone like that. Like, I guess that's during mourning. You know, when you mourn, that you reach out for something like that. So we're talking, and she wanted to meet for coffee and wasn't really telling me much, but she just wanted to meet for coffee. I told her, I'm like, I don't feel comfortable with this. My girlfriend just died less than 24 hours ago. And she kind of freaked out and, you know, hung up. So over time, Briar's sister was telling me that I should keep in contact with Jordy. And so I messaged Jordy. I'm like, what's your BBM? Like, we'll talk. And I messaged her on BBM. I'm like, hey, did you still want to go for that coffee? Jordy, a complete stranger, I have no idea who, is like, I'm not sure. You didn't keep your promise. And I'm just like, what? She's like, I kept my promise. Natasha, I came back for you. Now, some of you at this point are just like, what the fuck? How do you, like, believe that? Trust me, it was so real to me that Briar came back to life through Jordy Kelly. This is at that point. And I believed it. And I'm just like, oh my god, you actually came back. Da 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 da. I was so happy. And she's like, we have to see each other. I'm like, tell me about your new life. And she's like, Natasha, you should know I'm not as pretty anymore. I'm not as skinny anymore. I'm not 21 anymore. I'm now 18 and don't have a job and not in school and live with my parents. I don't drive. I can't drink. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, you came back. Da da da. I was so ignorant. We ended up meeting the next day. I met her up at Union, and in my head, I had the images of Briar. Beautiful, blonde, blue-eyed Briar, the girl I fell in love with. The girl that approached me with a bouquet of flowers in Union Station was this overweight, ginger, frizzy-haired white girl with this huge grin on her face approaching me, and I'm like, oh my god, what am I doing? So I end up spending the day with her because I felt so bad thinking this girl came back to fucking life to be with me. The voice was still there. The voice was there, and I'm pretty sure I fell in love with the voice. And so I tolerated and spent the day with her, but I can't even explain to you the looks we were having when they would see me, and after they would see her, and they would see us together, and this girl was always trying to, like, kiss me, and this girl's always trying to hold my hand, and I'm not a shallow person, but, you know, you have your limits. Like, that was just ridiculous. So, you know, I go home with this flowers and things like that, and my sister comes up to me, and because I told her about my day, and I showed her Jordy Kelly. My sister tells me, she's like, Natasha, I know you don't want to hear this, but I don't think Briar ever existed. And some of you that are watching are just like, well, no fuck. To me, that was hard to hear. But for some reason, deep down inside, I'm like, I think you may be right. So Briar never had a Facebook. She never had any social networkings. Jordy happened to have a Facebook. I kind of creeped her Facebook and found a photo album of Amelia. Ironically, the same name as her niece that she told me about. And there was a picture that she sent to me while she was Briar, when we were together. But this picture on Jordy's Facebook was taken in 2007. And that's when I knew. This girl lied to me, faked an identity, faked a rape, faked a death to make me fall in love with a Jordy Kelly. Yeah. And it sucks because even when I'm telling the story, I still get choked up because those feelings were real to me. I was lied to. I was made a fool. And this is why the moral, even though this video is insanely long, thank you for those that actually waited till the end of the story. I went off on her, and my sister picked up the phone and cussed her the fuck out. When I told my friends this, it was so hard to tell my friends because what they knew is my girlfriend died. And in reality, it was all a lie. Like, it's the most embarrassing thing. And they seen me, what I went through. They seen me cry. They seen all the emotions I went through, and they wanted to kill this girl. And if you're watching this, that's right. I'm telling people this story. That's why you have to be careful. Online dating, you have to be careful because there's people fucked up like that, like Miss Jordy Kelly, you fucking psycho, that will do things to that. Will do things to people like me. And the only good thing about this story is, like, I'm over it. I moved on. Ironically enough, I went back onto Plenty of Fish and found the most incredible person and kind of quit from there. I'm like, hey, that's it. Like, she's the last person I'll ever meet, and it turned out to be, like, a really amazing person. So I got really lucky with that. But other than that, please don't make the same mistake. And I'm pretty sure that's probably the most fucked up story. But that actually happened to me. So hope you guys enjoy that. Bye. Her dorky and cute. Her name was Briar. She messaged me, which I was shocked because I didn't think a girl like that would message me. We hit it off. We just had this instant connection, and it's really hard to explain, but it sounds silly through the internet, but there was just something there. So we were talking for the night on the computer, and easy enough. Friends of mine were really encouraging me to try online dating because I wasn't really much of going out and such, and so I decided to join a little site called Plenty of Fish. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this site. So I made a profile. I was as honest as I could be, put a couple of pictures up. Next thing you know, I was getting, hey guys, the story I'm about to share is true. The moral of this video is you gotta be careful who you give your trust to and who you give your heart to, and not everything on the internet is always real. Back in November, messages like crazy, emails blowing up. And I was discovering how many women like me, like girls that look like me, like straight looking girls that are gay, are like out here. And it was fun at first, because, getting that attention and so. November 20th, I got a message from a beautiful blonde. Her pictures were willing to give her my number, and we continued talking from there. That day forward, it was a non-stop conversation with this girl. I knew everything about her. I knew, like, her dog's name. I knew she was living in Toronto, 21, inherited a restaurant from her father, which was an actual restaurant called the Boiler House in Distillery District. Knew her family's name, family history, everything. We told each